you go.
Alright. So do the technical bit now.
That's good.
That's what we're all looking forward to. Getting down and dirty with Grails and Groovy, given that we're Groovy Sydney, or that's the stuff we want to talk about. So Greg was talking about, we've got the database side of things, a big enterprise database. We put our own messaging layer in the middle, and we've got like good-looking customer-facing web apps that show interfaces that are specific to like particular needs we've got. So we end up with like 2 and like went on to build 3 applications here. So like with that 3-tier architecture, part of what we were looking for was that separation of the interface so we could target them very closely. And we wanted the messaging layer to be light, which is why I went for a pure Spring. It's just a pure Spring container, so actually you just run it as a jar. And then the back end is all Oracle. So you've got that architecture from Greg's stuff, which is good. So the Spring is just like, we didn't use the Oracle container, of course, it's quite old. It's like a 1.3. And there's all this legacy stuff in the back end that is like there's a, 1,200 tables or something in the back. So we wanted a really nice looking interface to that. If we wanted to get customer details, then we just wanted to get customer details. So we just created interfaces for a customer, for a thing we abstracted out to call a notice, and we created interfaces in the Oracle enterprise system, just pure SQL things that our Spring middleware called to get that data, and then it shunted that along message queues to our front-end Grails app, and that was that. So look for a really lightweight container. This Spring one was really good, actually. It never crashed the whole time we were there. There was that case where something in the network went offline for a couple of weeks, and with the messaging architecture that nobody noticed until we restarted the connection. But then, but it was really easy to deploy the Spring stuff, and you just copy the jar file in and run it, right? And it works really well with Grails, because Grails being based on Spring, and I'll show you one of my main points, it means that all the configurations carry across. So they're all totally portable. You start off with Spring, then you can actually port those configurations and not actually reinvent the wheel very much as you go from this Spring middleware into the actual Grails front-end applications. And this was good stuff for me, because we're an extremely lightweight team. Basically, Greg, myself, and a PL SQL programmer ended up making applications that can talk, do all this enterprise integration things, and deliver these projects to the business. So important to keep it all together. So, and the idea of pulling out interfaces means that we can be a little bit agile and just build what the parts that we need at each time. And so this structure here was really good in just allowing us to pick off parts, incrementally build those web interfaces that we wanted at any given time, and you add another connection to that each time. So, Apache Camel, Greg talked about it. It's supposed to be a Swiss Army knife for integration patterns. It's basically a meta layer on top of Java messaging and whatever else you might choose to integrate. And the point of it is to try and consolidate the way you talk to all those things, so that if you want to talk Java messaging or you want to talk SOAP, then really all you have to do is change one interface piece, and then none of the rest of the system needs to know about that. So it abstracts out all the interfaces to all the integration pieces that you might want, and it also has this abstraction, a file called a routes file, where all the interfaces to your web apps are in one place. So that's a good thing. If you want to know what's connecting to what, then it's really quite obvious what the connections are. Making sense? Alright, technical stuff. So, like the first bit of, I think, in these projects, unfortunately, at the moment, is you get Maven going. And so the main point with our Maven was that we ended up with a command Maven package which created 2 jar files. One which was Java with dependencies. So there's a good packaging tool that does that. And so if you want more details on that, ask and I'll send you the references. And that Java with dependencies was our Spring middleware app that we just run. And the other bit that comes out of that is just a jar file with all the libraries in it, which is what we actually package into the Grails application.
But
so
actually, the thing that took me a while to understand about this as John was building it is that it's just mirror images of the same thing on both sides. So you're putting in the same declarations of all the objects and message types and all that. They're just mirrored. And the only difference is that you're putting all the libraries in on the side that's going to run standalone, which is the server side in this case, and the client side it's being bound with the other environment.
So and that actually makes it quite easy to integrate the actual types because they're always the same. So this is the Spring config. One thing about Camel, there are 1,000 ways to do everything. You can do this in Java, you can do this in like the Spring config, and there's 4 or 5 other ways just to call it with Java and stuff like that. So the Spring XML was the way that I found was good. There's only really 2 things to getting the Camel going. One is you do this thing which is component scan, and that tells it the top level of your class structure that you want it to pass through. And Camel has all these concepts of like a component and something that translates one type to another. It has these various concepts built into it that you can do through annotations. So do that, and then I ended up actually pulling out the routes file, which it would find if by default if I put it in there. I pulled this out so that I could replace it in testing, so that I could have like there's a book on Apache Camel by Claus Isbin, a Mead one, a ManyPress one, and it has a whole chapter on testing and mocking things up, and Camel has good support for this. But I found that you start off the middleware with just a Java class, Java main class. It loads in your Camel Routes file, and that makes it really easy to change if you want to do testing things. So like for the Spring people, that's pretty simple, yeah? Go on the next one, go there. So ActiveMq, I spent a little bit with this, and it's more Spring file, one includes the other. So there's the JMS connection factory with the pool connection factory, which I actually spent a little while ending up here because there's a few dead ends in Jenks or something like that takes a little bit of trouble. Do you find that with ActiveMq?
I used it in the past. I used it 2 years ago, I remember.
Yeah, so like I use the ActiveMq one. This one's on the Camel site. This config's pretty straight on there. And so what we've done here is set up our messaging server, and now we've got something where we can actually talk to. And this is the goodness with the Camel Routes. And this is what I'm talking about when everything's abstracted. Everything's abstracted into this single file called a routes file. And this is what we're after, because again we wanted to be able to have that flexibility, change around the back-end interfaces, back-end stuff. If you move the interfaces, and we all wanted to, like the idea of having nice clear interfaces where we can see everything, because we think that helps. So it's a Camel route. Now there's with domain-specific language, which is again, this is a Fowler concept again. Yeah. So what I'm trying to do is condense the programming language into meaningful steps. And Camel has DSLs in Java in this instance, Spring XML, Scala, Perl probably, I think, Python, a few, right? Like, it's got a whole bunch of languages. The one thing about this Camel really is this Swiss Army knife and does everything. So that's the way I had going. And how this works is this is receiving a message, and so it says here from ActiveMq queue, send it to this debugging process, send it through this processor, which is picked up via the Spring scanning, and then send it to, I don't know if you can read this, but it says bean offline activities data access thing. So what we're doing here is we've received a request to get some notices. We call it a database backend using that data access bean. And then we've got another processor which actually copies, just all it does is copy the input into the output message so that it gets sent back again. And the ActiveMq takes care of the sending back. So that's our pipeline thing that Greg was talking about. Just a set of sequential processing steps that nice and clear. You can see kind of what the logic is in doing this process and everything. Okay? Can you read it? Yeah. They did muck up the DSL a little bit with this Java, some of these Java things down here. You can see it says from this message queue, log it, and then do try, right? And so there's a little bit of programming stuff in there, and there's a bit of a few callback kind of concepts that can do a lot of error checking. And so there's a bit of work involved in the error checking, and sometimes this kind of do try conditional logic can start to mess up the just, well, I want to do this, then I want to do this, then I want to do this thing. So maybe they can abstract out that bit in the future. Because like, just in my view, that muddies it a little bit, right? Does that make sense? Okay. So, we had, that's the middleware. And so, what Greg was talking about before, we've got objects here, we've got in the middleware, we've got objects in the Grails, and we don't want to have to configure this twice. You put a message down, an ActiveMq JMS message, and it gets serialized, sent out, and then deserialized, ends up like the same thing again, right? So keeping those in sync is one of the challenges, and the way we did it was define everything in the Spring middleware. Okay, so this is Grails. Spring just chucked XML into a Spring directory called resources.xml. You can do this. Looks exactly the same as the other one, right? Same as the back end. So it's got this component scan thing. There's this thing here, camel template, ID equals camel template. So now Grails will take care of this for me, inject it into absolutely everything. All I've got to do is def camel template, and I've got a handle on camel to call and start sending messages. So, so after spending a little while, I went down some like black holes reading about Wave and trying to do the continuation servlet stuff. This was great, you know, it's just simple. Okay, you can be a little bit more groovy. Now, resources.groovy. I thought I'd try to be a little bit more groovy, and so I actually did the ActiveMq configs in the Groovy language, DSL. So this is equivalent to the XML Spring thing that I had before in the middleware layer. Again, you've got the same, you know, connection pools and so forth, right? At the end of the story, you get the same ActiveMq handle to send messages to and receive messages from. Does the same thing, but then this is the Groovy way to do it. So there's a bit of DSL all the DSLs end up being the same as just whether you type it in Python or whatever, right?
I will say the Scala does look different.
Does it?
Yeah, it has a different visual feel to it in when it's a DSL. It has kind of, because that whole string of the ... that you get in the so-called Java DSL, you know, so to concatenate an active component, you just add another, you know, member function reference and keep stringing them along.
Yeah.
Scala doesn't look like that. It looks a lot more like pipe programming, actually. So.
Yeah. So, like, you can override, like, Groovy has this normal config.groovy where everyone goes, but you can actually override the Spring stuff using Spring resources XML and Spring resources Groovy like that. So, getting in a hurry, they wanted the project done next week. So, so we put the routes in the Grails end. This is the route. So all I did was create a class called Route Builder in the Java source my package name area. I figured I'd learned enough about, you know, Camel stuff to be able to write this in Java, and it's a little bit opaque. So I was happy to be able to just take it and make it work. And so we ended up just, this is what we did in Grails. We made a Java class, the component scan thing you saw before in the resources XML. It finds this automatically, and all of a sudden we've got our route definitions on the web server end. Okay, so here's some of the error handling staff goodness you can do at the top that is like you want to spend a little bit of time playing with Camel. So like if you've got a particular type of error, one of these things below, you can do stuff like retry 5 times, back off, all this goodness. And here's our client route. So like from this timer, run this every 60,000 milliseconds. And call, you probably can't read this at all, right? Call B, notice reconciliation server method equals reconcile. And that's how you call the Grails service. And it's just like that. All you're going to have to do is have a Grails service around with a named notice reconcile service and have a method in there called reconcile. And that's how, when you get your message received on this route, that's how how Grails will process it. So it's good like that. I put the do try stuff around there to manage errors because I'm particularly interested in these cases. Okay. Now the Grails Camel plugin. There's one. This is the guy in Brisbane. He made a Grails Camel plugin, right? And it's the latest version is in Git. I tried this, and it's quite a few versions back in Camel releases. They're up to 2.04 or something like that. It's quite old. I don't think much has happened for this, but in Git there's a more recent version, and like anyone in Git can start hacking it. And he started going down a new DSL for routes, which he thought was more groovy and like trim more things out. So this is one I took from another project we did, missions calculator thing, and what it does, it like shows some of the other integrations that you can do. For example, like I just grabbed this person's Twitter feed by using the Camel RSS component. So Camel RSS component, call the Twitter feed, call Grails bean RSS receiver, so method equals receive, and he has cleaned up the DSL a bit, as you can see, but I didn't end up being able to use it so much because it didn't have all the features that the Camel has itself, right? And I think this big DSL is still under evolution. So you can see like how easy it is actually to build up a Camel in Grails, and you just resource XML, chuck the Camel jar files in, and build a routes file, and you're away, right? So not having a plugin wasn't a big impediment to other things we've done. And if I was going to do anything reasonably complicated, I'd say that this is not quite ready yet. Okay. And Grails domain objects. So we had our domain objects in the middleware, define them in Spring. Like everyone knows how to do a Spring beam better than I do probably. I've mucked around with this one, adding all the XML types so that I could actually deserialize it for logging and things like that. Anyway, we find our beans in the middleware, and so we want to get those over to Grails. What do? Or a little trick here, all you have to do is fill out hibernate.xml. So you just, simple as that, and then all of a sudden Grails picks up the classes that you've built, copied over with the jar file, maybe package, copy the jar file that you built from the middleware, and define which package you want Grails to know about. You say mapping package, and all of a sudden you can start creating controllers. You can do the normal find or buy stuff that Grails gives you, all that stuff to help you be more productive, and you're away. Any questions on this sort of stuff? All good? You've done this before? Yeah? I thought this was a good trick. I was like, you know, they start off with here's how you define everything in Gorm, and this is the Grails way and stuff like that. And then, like, you realise actually it's not that far removed from the whole Spring thing. It's actually really, really easy to pull it together like that. Yeah. All right. Good. So here's an example of my sending message. All good. So it's just a standard Grails service. We had Camel template to find that in the resources XML. So Grails/Spring knows about Camel template, and that's injected just def whatever. And so all we wanted to do was send a message. Camel template, send body, send a message, simple as that. So in this example, I just used it to do an audit log course. I was sending a message, getting this whole batch of stuff back, and wanting to be able to replay it. So what I did was serialize the whole thing, deserialize the whole thing, and put it in a database so that I could replay. And I found that was good because then I could actually, any test cases that I wanted to build, all I had to do was pull out the data, write the test case, and run it. And it repeated quite accurately what the scenario was that people were trying to work with. Okay. So we didn't actually start off with the InOut Pattern. This goes back to Hope and Wolf book, like where they've got routers and pipelines of things and all this sort of stuff. So, but messaging really has, the ones we used were the InOut Pattern and the Publish Subscribe one. We start off with Publish Subscribe because it's logical. We've got this person, they want to listen to all the updates of clients that are happening. And we don't want to do this single, so we don't mind particularly when it happens. We want it to always kind of just be as up to date as possible, right? So we start off with Publish Subscribe, which I've got on the next slide how to implement it. But the problem with that is that all this messaging stuff is designed to work in enterprise backbones, gigabit, Ethernet, all that sort of stuff, where you're not paying for the bandwidth. And the initial Publish Subscribe, pardon me, like looked at my hosting provider. I use like those, grid computing guys. They rang up and said, "Oh, you've used 60 gigabytes in the last week. We're gonna have to charge you more." I go, "Have to think about that again, all right?" So went in out every 10 minutes or something, send a message, get this whole batch of stuff back, and be done with it. So in out is Camel template, request body. So the difference between just a send and forget is like you do send body. In out is Camel template request body, and that means you get a response back in here. So I get a big package which is all my just a set of changes in our case, because we abstracted all the changes out from the underlying domain classes we got. So I got a big set of things, which then all I can do is process that with Groovy, save it to a database, so we can do our diffing algorithm that we had, version control algorithm that we had, and nice, right? Any questions? No? Seeing this, this is Groovy for once. So, yeah. So the other point on this,
I was just going to say that, yeah, the check for new activities is a pretty cool function, because that was just, we only had to implement four entry points to the back end. They're like so simple, enter a new client, grab an appointment, get me off. Because the thing is, stuff's happening in the background because there's people doing things behind your back, right? So we need to know what's happened, because we don't want to be telling lies. So that's what that does. So but that's just one of the 4 entry points. So if you've got an interface that's that skinny, this is just where you call it, and it's just another component for you.
Yeah. So the other thing with Grails is everything in the service, all services are rapid transactions. So I think this is a bit obsolete, but you have to be aware of that in all this stuff, because you receive a big batch of stuff, then it'll roll back the whole transaction, which is maybe what you want, maybe not what you want. So I wrapped this thing with a transaction. I don't know why. I think maybe because I had trouble. Maybe that log stuff was running out of memory, or not out of memory, but had some errors at some point or something. No, that wouldn't work, would it? Anyway, transactions you can always in every service. So this was the way to publish, subscribe. As I said, it cost me money, which annoyed me. And so what you do is call it a topic, basically, right? This is your messaging experience. So if you call it a topic, then it becomes publish, subscribe. In the background, it'll poll the server and say, got anything else for me, got anything else for me. Continuous 2 kilobits a second or something like that to do that. Publish, subscribe. Large batches, so more on transactions. I sent 200 megabytes of this stuff over ActiveMq. Just worked fine with that, except for Grails got the end of it and saw 200 megabytes of messages. Again, back to my grid computer, I paid for 500 megabytes of RAM or something, so runs out of memory. So way to manage that is to put it in transactions and then clear the Grails Hibernate session every N. Seen this trick before? It's a little bit popular, this one, but it's a trap. If you try to do a lot of stuff in Grails, whatever kind of batch processing you're doing, whether it's reading stuff off a file and running around creating objects, Hibernate doesn't commit it until you either clear it or it goes out of the transaction. So you can run out of memory, and that's one of the ways to beat that, right?
I haven't come across that change record batch before.
That's me. Change record batch with transaction. So this thing here is the name of the Grails domain object that we actually defined in our Spring application, put in the Hibernate, and you can actually use any class there. It doesn't care really. So if you've got if you define in Grails a class called gym, then you can go gym with transaction. It doesn't matter, right? But all it is this provides it a handle. Obviously, all those objects have got the transaction stuff in them.
Yeah. Change record batch is just a collection of what we call change records.
Yeah.
And the change record is just an individual edit command, basically.
Yeah, that goes down to our subversion delta kind of algorithm. So this is just a collection of the deltas, really. So, but yeah, so the with transactions are a method that got injected by Grails for you, even though the chain record batch is defined in the middleware. Okay. All right. So that's my final slide. So the good things out of this, we've got our specific front-end applications. We've got the shared configuration between the middleware and the Grails nicely working. There's 1,000 ways to do Camel. It took me, and I guess that is a little bit against the Grails kind of mentality, which is configuration over convention. Like you start off with something and then you